Hello, I'm Tim Cummins. I've been actively monitoring the many messages coming in during the course of the week. It's been really exciting, the uptake on the MOOC, the number of you who are very actively engaged, and some of the great conversations that are going on. Clearly people have been fascinated by a lot of the topic, but it's been great to see so many valuable observations and lively discussions that are progressing. We're very much looking forward to the next couple of weeks, but let me pick up on two or three of the points that I particularly noticed during the course of this week have generated a lot of interest and a lot of that discussion. So one, I think, inevitably is the question of the contract as opposed to the relationship, which is more important. Do you have to have one in order to have the other, etc., etc.? And the answer, of course, is no, they are in many respects independent items. But on the other hand, one of the things we're very clearly observing today is that strong relationships, particularly over time, and particularly in the business-to-business environment, are better supported by a good contract. In fact, one of the models that we're increasingly working with here at IACCM is what we term relational contracting. That is really looking at the contract creating a positive framework for the relationship, for the way that the parties will work together. I think it's important to remember that in a business environment, you're very often not dealing with a single person. Obviously, you're often dealing with a lot of people and even with similar transactional activity. So what the contract can bring you is a level of predictability and consistency in the understanding of obligations, commitments, what is acceptable performance, what are your rights, etc. So I think on that point of relationship and contract, the answer is it's both, and in the best environments, they're increasingly integrated activities. A second particular point that I've spotted, which is quite lively, is the correlation between contracts and procurement. I could pick up on quite a number of aspects of that one, but one I am going to pick up on is particularly, do remember that contracts are not just about procurement. They're very much actually about selling things. And for the majority of, again, the business-to-business world, it is, of course, through selling things that they have a need to buy things. In other words, procurement, other than perhaps in the public sector, is very much dependent upon your success in selling, and most of those sales are conducted under contract. So contract management is, in a sense, the discipline that actually binds organizations together. It creates the connectivity between often very complex value networks and supply chains. Third and final point, the week started with a whole set of material and discussion around culture and the influence of culture, and there's been quite a lot of debate in terms of, does culture really matter when it comes to contracts? Well, the answer is absolutely yes, it does. This goes well beyond just a question of whether or not there are jurisdictional and legal differences. There are major behavioral differences. There are different attitudes towards business ethics and business practices. There are certainly different viewpoints around obligations to pay. The whole question of time has tremendous dependency upon cultural attitudes. So as we look at negotiating and managing contracts across cultures, we see three quite real and significant divides that need to be taken into account, otherwise you run into major risk. One of those, of course, is the issue of national culture. I can give you an example of a large UK corporation that decided to dramatically expand its operations in emerging markets, but hadn't understood and appreciated the incremental risks in terms of getting acceptance of its products and, importantly, of getting paid. Within 3 years, that company had issued several profit warnings and finished up being broken up. It's no longer a major corporation. It's, in fact, doesn't really exist at all, except in its component pieces that have been bought by other companies. So yes, grasping international culture is a critical issue. But it goes beyond that. I think also, of course, different industries have different cultures. Some are by nature much more collaborative, much more fair in their dealings, much more ethical. I think most of us would certainly look at industries like retail, and we only need to look at a lot of the stories that hit the press about the way that they treat their suppliers to realize that there is a culture, if you like, that very often permeates an industry. And finally, there's definitely a culture too that applies to different functions within a business. The lawyers are a community, the finance people are a community, the project managers and the engineers, and they all actually bring different cultural perspectives based upon their professional background. It's all of this that ultimately makes this field of contracting so fascinating, because the role of the contracts professional or practitioner is very much around assimilating and understanding all these different viewpoints and in a way aggregating them so that at the end of the day we can actually deliver successful results. Thanks very much again for participating in the MOOC, and we look very much forward to your continued participation over the next couple of weeks. Bye for this week.